under the, I guess, threat or potential idea of going to the Land and Environment Court. I think we need to make our decisions based on how we feel and how we feel this is going to affect the neighbours and the streetscape. It's not right for the area, and if you feel that way, you should vote that way. I'm not one for voting the way that I think I should vote, or the way that I think I shouldn't vote, because I'm worried about going to the Land and Environment Court. So I think we need to be very careful.
Thank you, Councillor Roach. Is there any more discussion? Yes.
Before I do, I'd just like to ask the Director of Planning, what's the difference between a shed and a garage? Because in his letter to Council, he says that he has 4 sons, 3 grandchildren, and I don't know how many vehicles he's got. He's got a lot of vehicles, and they want to put the vehicles in the shed. So when it becomes a garage or a shed?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the average person on the street would say the garage is principally to house vehicles. A shed could be used for other purposes. I'm not sure if there's any sort of particular planning definition between those 2 types of structures. I'll say no. My colleague is agreeing with that judgment. But from a practical point of view, your decision, I don't think, needs to distinguish between what the shed is used for. It's there as a structure.
The other question is, the floor area of this is 96 square metres. How big is the average house of square metres? Is that 100? 200? 20 squares? Is there anything that says we have to have sheds in proportion to the size of the house?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, not specifically, but there are, when a lot is being a privilege sought for dwellings and sheds and buildings and so on, the criteria in relation to setback means there needs to be a relationship between the shed, garage, and the building. And then there's a requirement that there be a certain amount of private open space. So they're indirect controls which govern the relationship of buildings on the site.
I'd just like to wind up because it worries me that the whole purpose of this shed is actually for the couple that have applied for this with 4 sons, and they have up to 5 vehicles at the house and a motorcycle and a tandem trailer. I would like to garage as many vehicles as we can. So this is going to be a big traffic problem apart from anything else. It's a very large shed for lots of vehicles, and I think it's just inappropriate to have that in a suburban street with a setback that's not in line with the other setbacks. So I certainly think we should vote that the house is built first, and then we see how the shed can fit in. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morse. I'll get the General Manager to read out that amendment, and then I'll call a division.
Mr. Mayor, I have as the motion on the table that Council A, as the consent authority, refuse consent pursuant to section 4.16 of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979 to development application number 2020/143 for the following reasons. Roman numeral 1, the proposed shed will have an adverse impact on the streetscape due to its size and location. B, advise the applicant that any shed or shipping container would not be considered as exempt development under Bathurst Regional Local Environmental Plan 2014 until such time as the building lines are established on the site by way of approval of the main dwelling on the property. C, advise the applicant that the shed may be reconsidered via a new development application or by a review under section 8.2 of the Act when approval is granted for a dwelling on the property. D, notify those that made submissions of its decision, and E, call a division.
Okay, councillors, now I will call a division. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. We move on now to item number 7, development application number 2020-127, 9 2-storey residential units at 20 Griffith Street. Councillor North. Question? Yes.
I'd like to add the point whether it moves to D and call a division to E, that the applicant must keep to the density requirements of that site.
Okay, I've got a mover. Have I got a seconder? Councillor Orban. Any discussion? Well, I'll get the general. Would you like to read out?
Through
Hang
Mr.
on.
Mayor, I was trying to possibly put the possibility of an amendment in. Is it too late for an amendment on this?
No.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, an amendment can be received, but at this stage, the councillors were asking for clarification of what Councillor North was moving.
That's it. And
Mr.
I asked the
Director,
general manager just to clarify that, which he was about to do.
yeah, could I just get the director to provide advice on that?
Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So Councillor North has raised the issue of density, and the report does indicate that there is a non-compliance with our council standard in that regard, and so that's the issue that Councillor North has raised. But can I also refer you to Part A of the recommendation as written, which was to support the variation to that density, and indeed there's reference to front building line setbacks as well. So for Councillor North to pursue his request, there need to be a variation to Part A as well.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that would then probably move down the path of the council A, not support the variation to the residential density prescribed in the Bathurst Regional Development Control Plan 2014. B, request that the applicant submit amended plans with a compliant density and reduced overshadowing. I understand there was an issue with overshadowing. The matter be further considered by council upon receipt of updated plans from the applicant. D, notify those that made submissions of its decision, and E, call a division.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, just further to those comments from the General Manager, so the intent of that alternate recommendation will be to give the applicant the opportunity to prepare amended plans. And so it would be that process that they would submit those for further assessment that is important to be captured in the resolution, if that's how council would like it to go. Thank you.
I think it's all clear. Councillor Fry.
Yeah, look, I'm more or less that is what my amendment would have been, as the General Manager read out, in the sense that if the density could be reconsidered by the developer and reference the amenity value of the people in Havenhand Way who've lodged their objections against having a double-storey building so close to their backyards and having single-storey buildings. So if the amendment is to reconsider the setbacks, reconsider the density, and I would also like to comment that these look like cookie-cutter designs, and they might work in Western Sydney where the weather's more moderate, or Queensland or something, but the reality is in Bathurst, we have -5, -10, and in summer we have 40, 43 degrees. There's no shading in the windows, there's no eaves, there's just this boxed off eaves and flat roofs. So, Mr. Director, are we in a position to ask them to design a more climate Bathurst weather friendly dwelling, or we've got no say in that?
Before we go to the director, we're not dealing with an amendment, we're dealing with the motion. Yes. Yes, you can still answer that, Director, if you like, but I just wanted to explain to Councillor Fry what we were dealing with.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. You did say, Councillor Fry, is it possible for council to ask? Yes. Is it possible for council to require? Not if it exceeds the statutory basics requirements.
Councillor North.
I'll explain, it's got lost. Yeah, I went and looked at the site, know of the area, and taking into mind that we're moving forward, we're talking about, I've said it in an earlier issue about we've got to look at medium density. more medium density housing and housing options in our Bathurst Regional Council area. I looked at this one and I thought, okay, a vacant space for a long time that people have probably used for parkland, but it was not a parkland area. And I looked at it, and another question that I've raised, and I was going to explain to the other councillors that I had a concern looking at the setbacks, and documents were put in front of the councillors to show that part of the setback issue is a corner of a porch, a side little bit of a carport. It's not, the building as such, the main building sitting really close. So although when doing the figure work on it, you could see a variation between 10% and I think it was nearly 16% in variations on the setback. But the thing that grabbed me was the density. I think it was about 21% variation. And what it was about is that I think we need them to go back and have a reconsider. And I think when they have a reconsider on the density, the things like, and was shown, the other councils would have a copy, things like the overshadow and all that, I would, if I'm correct, Mr. Director, that things like that with a potential redesign, would be required to be looking at overshadowing with potential changes because of the density issue I've raised.
Through Mr. Mayor. So as the General Manager has read, the request is that the amended plans be compliant with the density provisions and indeed be reduced overshadowing. May I suggest, Mr. Mayor, that whilst it might be possible for one or more councillors to think, well, that therefore means it must be single storey in certain parts, I think the applicant should be given the opportunity to reconfigure the site. It might still be achievable with two-storey configuration, for example. And I note too that the resolution as read by the recommendation as read by the General Manager is silent in regards to the setback issue, as you've just described, that it's a relatively minor in the scheme of things.
Yeah, and that was an issue that, and I don't mean to have it hit on you, Mr. Director, on regards to this, is probably, looking at the drawings and now seeing a larger drawing. As I said, it was thank you for all your time yesterday, understanding that it wasn't, I'm going to have a wall right next to it and they're going to be breaking the code, that it's a carport, it's the edge of a porch. What was the third one? I think another porch. But yeah, when taking into consideration what it is, they're quite open. But as I said, I think we've got to be understanding with the applicant. That's why the time I spent with you and spoke to the General Manager about it. I think we're going to see potentially more of these in the future, but I think we've got set guidelines in place, understanding now, as I said, it was going to be part of my application to have the setbacks, but I'm comfortable with that based on the reasons. But, I think they've got to have the chance to be able to, like any applicant, to maybe potentially reconfigure. And if it's 2 stories, knowing what's in the area, I don't think it necessarily be out of favour.
Okay. Is there any more discussion? If not, I'm going to put the motion and call a division. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. We go on to item number 8, modification, development application, demolition and construction of a fast food restaurant, Taco Bell, at 103 and 105 Stewart Street, Bathurst. Applicant McDuck Properties and owners. Can I have a mover and a seconder?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, Councillor Christian. I understand Councillor Fry has a declaration on this item, and that should be done before any discussion occurs.
Mr. Clear, in non-pecuniary interest, I have a relative that owns a property in that area.
Okay. Councillor Christian?
Yeah, I'd like to make the following changes. I'd like to remove the word not from recommendation A and either scrap B completely or change the word except to refuse in B and call a division. Or if the General Manager's got better wording, I'll take that on board.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Could I suggest the wording would be that Council grant consent pursuant to Section 4.16 of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979 to the modification of development application number 2019/367 to delete condition 5 And number 5, relating to access onto Howick Street, and B, call a division.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for that? Hang on. I have a seconder. Now you can ask a
I
question.
just want to clarify that this means that they would be allowed to come out of Howick Street and turn right. Is that the meaning of what you're asking? Thank you. Right.
Okay. That's the question. Councillor Christian?
Yeah, the reason I've asked for that is because we've got our brief, and the RMS have had a look at this site, as have council, has some councillors, and that wasn't an issue that was brought up initially before we had the meeting and discussed the last DA at the last meeting. Apparently, the Taco Bell owners feel quite aggrieved, and they're happy to walk away from Bathurst. Whether that's a bluff call or not, it's not for me to say. However, we must do everything we can, obviously within reason, but we must do everything we can to invite a company of this magnitude into the Bathurst area. These days, we're seeing shopping centres or supermarkets with self-serve counters. McDonald's now has even got a thing where you can do it all on your own. So the job prospects for young people aren't that great these days, particularly with COVID and what we're going through now. So I think we have to do absolutely everything we can to support employment opportunities for our young people in this city. Now, this is an opportunity where if it does become an issue, this intersection, where people turning off Howick Street into Stewart Street becomes an issue, that's something we can come back and look at. Simply, I think, with a no right-hand turn sign. However, some people would still have an issue with cars driving straight ahead, but I think we have a look and see how it goes. I don't like the idea of being difficult. This company's identified this site. It's going to do wonders for the city. I mean, I remember when the news broke, you had people from Orange, which is now getting a Taco Bell incidentally, but Lithgow and surrounding areas, Oberon, everybody was really excited. It wasn't just Bathurst people, it was people that live in surrounding areas. It's a big name company, and I think we need to do everything we can to support this company. And I'll tell you what, we'd have some serious eggs on our face if they weren't bluffing. If this council destroyed this opportunity, then, mate, I think heads would roll. So I just think we'll see how it goes, which is fair. If there's an issue, we can address that later on. This isn't George Street and Durham Street. It's just not. So we can't. I think it's unfair to compare them.
Thank you, Councillor Christian. Is there any more discussion? Councillor Roach?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Look, nothing's changed with this DA. It's the same application that we voted on in June 2020. As I said at the beginning, at the first DA, councils need to stick to their decisions. We shouldn't be supporting this variation. Councillor Orban raised it. He was concerned about it. Councillor Morse was concerned about it. She seconded it. We simply cannot backflip on conditions. That was the condition of the DA. And look, we need to stick to our guns on this. It's not the right place for this. That's why they're having so many issues. You can't compare Bathurst to Orange. Orange side is totally different. It's chalk and cheese. Jobs. There's food outlets that are opening up in the gateway at Kelso. We do have more outlets, fast food outlets that are opening. I say we don't backflip on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Roach. Is there any more discussion? Councillor Orban?
I'll put him in 20 cents worth. Gee, Mr. Director, no worry, I can't get you on the phone of a day. You got a lot to do here, haven't you? Look, yeah, I know, he goes through it. Look, I'm not going to backflip on this one, and I can see where Councillor Christian's coming from. He doesn't want Taco Bell to walk away from Bathurst for one condition, but when I stand on that intersection and I watch what's happening, I mean, you look at somewhere in the realm of 12 to 15,000 vehicle movements a day on that road. You come out of Howick Street and they talk sight distance. You go out there now, there's 4 or 5 cars parked up and they're always there on the right hand side, coming out of Howick, turning right onto Stewart. You cannot see. Sight distance is 0. You poke your nose out there and there's a B double coming down the road. sayonara, tacos all over your windscreen, I'd reckon. So for that reason, I just can't backflip on this one. I'm going to hold the line, and I won't be supporting that motion to overturn the condition. I just think it's too dangerous. I really think, and we've got to look into the future. 10 years down the track, when Bathurst is a lot bigger, this intersection is a lot busier, it will be a KFC corner. And I'm not going to put my name to making this intersection the same as that horrid thing that we've got down there now. We're looking at it through traffic committee now as to what we can do at that KFC intersection to get a little bit easier to use, as it were. But that intersection, yes, Howick Street is not George Street. It doesn't come in from Kelso, but Stewart Street is very, very busy. I won't have my name to people turning out there from Taco Bell, and I will stick to the condition that I asked for.
Thank you, Councillor Orban. Councillor Morse.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of questions, and I certainly took Councillor Orban's advice on this last one. What we haven't asked is the possibility for getting traffic lights there. I know it took a long time to get traffic lights at Keppel Street. That was forever to get those traffic lights. Would that be the answer, to have the exit where they want to in Howick Street and then turn right? Because I was considering, if you come out into Stewart Street, which is what we've agreed to, how do they then go to Orange? They go down to the left and then they go round and round and then they go back. It's a bit of a roundabout way, but can traffic lights...
I'll get the director to answer that for you, Councillor Morse.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I will ask Director of Engineering to add to my opening comment, which is that the treatment of the intersection is not part of the DA. It would be a separate consideration.
I realise that, but I mean, is it something, maybe I could ask the Director of Engineering or Councillor Orban whether that would be the answer to that?
I think we'll address that to the director.
Through Mr. Mayor, the consideration of traffic lights at any intersection is a matter for Transport for New South Wales, formerly the RMS, Whole Roads and Maritime Services. So Council does not have delegated authority to make those decisions at intersections. Should it be requested, the RMS would undertake, or Transport for New South Wales would undertake a warrant to ascertain whether they were appropriate at that intersection or not. Then there would be a discussion as to who pays.
Yeah, well, Councillor Morse hasn't finished yet.
Well, I was just going to ask, if we agree to the original recommendation, in other words, we don't support the application, could we have another line in it saying, and the investigations into the installation of traffic lights at that intersection? I just put that forward as an idea.
You answer that one, please, Director.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, my request is that the matter be confined to the application at hand. There could be a separate motion from the council, but I'd prefer it not be included in this one.
Okay. No, is there any other question?
The reason why they want this right turn from Howick onto Stewart is traffic coming from Sydney heading out Orange Way. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, my interpretation of the applicant's, to have the condition removed, the applicant's submission is that it's not just that traffic movement. They also feel that they're dependent on people leaving into Howick Street and turning right to head into the suburban parts of that part of Bathurst, not just the right turn as if you were heading to Orange.
Okay, because...
A question?
Yes, it's a question. Could traffic be diverted if they leave onto the Stewart Street exit and it is orange traffic or Dubbo traffic or whatever you like? It would be actually quicker would it be actually quicker to go left onto Durham and go out to Bradwardine Road and up and out of the roundabout at the RTA? Seems logical to me, with signage.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll need to answer that question. I don't have those travel times to answer the question.
Okay. Is there any more discussion before I come back to you, Councillor Christian? A question, Councillor Christian?
Yeah, question through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Director of Planning, and I'm just stating the obvious here, but I'm making a point. Can you currently turn right from Howick Street into Stewart Street?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes.
How many councillors have come to you before now and raised serious objections in regards to safety issues at this intersection because of that movement?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I will ask Director of Engineering to answer that question, because those sorts of issues would normally be directed to the Traffic Department.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, prior to Council's consideration of this, its complaints would be considerably low at that intersection.
Low, or we just no number on it?
I don't have a number. It certainly doesn't rank in terms of intersections as being a problem in Bathurst.
Okay.
So I'd suggest low, but I can't say none.
Okay, thank you.
Which is very interesting. Currently, this site...
Is this a question?
No,
I'm asking questions.
Yeah.
Currently on this site, you can leave via the Howick Street entrance and turn onto Stewart Street. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes.
And last but not least, the RMS, upon looking at this DA, voiced no objections in regards to safety issues at this site.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's not quite as clear cut as the previous answers. The RMS, Transport for New South Wales, did not require any additional conditions relating to that traffic movement, to that intersection. They did require a change to the original plans for traffic movements, such that it was only left in, left out off Stewart Street. That was a change to the plans as originally submitted. That required a change to the plans as originally submitted. And the submission from Transport for New South Wales did raise their concerns about possible safety impacts on that intersection. And my recollection is that they did that based on accident history.
Okay, I think he's answered those questions. Councillor Jennings.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The driving argument for letting them have what they want is jobs, apparently. Have we been provided with any business case analysis of the two different scenarios and the impact on their cash flow analysis?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no.
I didn't think so, and I assume nobody else has received anything like that. I'd be open to hearing what the and changing my position from sticking with the original condition if I was presented with a clear indication and some rational logic as to why the condition that we're putting on them is going to result in reduced sales and to what extent those sales are reduced. So without that, I don't think they're really doing us the courtesy of giving us a good reason. They're just saying we're going to pack up our, take our bat and ball and go home. Well, that's sort of jumping to a threat. I don't want to respond to a threat. I want to have a clear indication of what is the business case, what is the impact of doing it the way we suggested. In terms of the impact and supposedly gaining local jobs, I mean, Taco Bell or any other new business to town is not going to magic up money into customers' pockets. Those customers that they get are therefore not going to another cafe or business in Bathurst. So has there been any assessment, if you want it as a question, in terms of the impacts of loss of sales for other local businesses, loss of employees for other local businesses? And is there any indication of where the profits go from Taco Bell? Are they likely to be spent in the local community, just like I suspect they very much are likely to be spent in the local community if people spend their money and put their profits with piccolos, ristretto, banjos, country coffee, sweet caramel, the grind, crema, pit stop pies, Johnny Been Good, others a bit further in, al dente, legal, the brew, Harvest Cafe. There's a heap of them. There's a heap of them. And they will all have some negative impact from more competition. Fair enough, I don't mind competition, but to be saying that this is just nothing but great news does not take into account the reality of our local economy. And the businesses I've just listed then are only a handful and doesn't include even any of the other takeaway fast food type outlets. So I think those factors need to be considered. And until I get presented with a rational argument as to what actual impact, is it a 2% impact on sales, a 5%, 10%, 50%, because we don't allow this, the condition that they want, until I get, have the courtesy of being given an argument that actually makes sense, I'll stick to not supporting the new alternate recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Jennings. Question?
It's a question. I've just been looking at the map, the diagram here. Can they come out of the entrance and exit? There's an exit into Howick Street. Can they turn right to go up Howick Street?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, the condition number 5 prohibits exit into Howick Street.
At all?
Correct.
Oh. Because I was thinking, the question is, if they came and went right into Howick Street, they could go along and then come down to the Keppel Street traffic lights and go off to Orange. You got a sign saying Orange, go that way. Is that no right turn absolutely fixed in the approval of the DA? Is there an exit into Howick Street? Is it that fixed?
So, through you, Mr. Mayor, Council resolved to prohibit exit into Howick Street, full stop, which therefore prohibited any movement, left or right, into Howick Street.
Councillor North.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the time when it came up last time, and Councillor Orban spoke to me and said, respect for Councillor Orban of, I guess, 30 years as a driving instructor. Sorry? Okay. You've been around for a while. And spoke about the concerns. And like Councillor Orban, like myself, we've lived in this district for a long time. I actually go down that road a hell of a lot. And I was comfortable at the time to raise the question with them and put that objection in to say we are concerned about that intersection. Also know myself that in all the time you can do that right turn, in all the years, I'm probably lucky to have done it a couple of times, because I think most people would look at it and say, highway traffic, got to cut this lane and go across. We as councillors for a long time, and I've argued the case, it frustrates me no end, that we can get a report, say a noise report, and one consultant who comes who's been paid by this group and another consultant from this group, they've all got the same letters after names, got the same qualifications, and can give me 2 different reports. To the best of my knowledge, every name that has changed, the RMS, Traffic New South Wales, Traffic New South Wales is the authority. Is the authority that if they put down in front of me and said that we have a major problem, we don't want it to go ahead, it's going to cause problems. It was raised about the potential about the impact on a business and dollars. I've never known in my time to be here that we're going to go down that path. But yeah, any competition will affect the business. We have a director of engineering that has said to us that the data does not back up with the crashes or incidents on that site. The RMS, there obviously would have been incidents on that site, but it's nothing. I'm sure that the council, like we did when we had that long debate about the roundabout at Mitre Sutter, that there was information there, and certain people always came in and told us how many accidents or near accidents or whatever occurred. There was one consent authority that looks after it. So when it came back, I thought, I've got to go and have a look at this again. So I'm driving up there. I do not turn right. And I think a lot of educated people would probably not take that right-hand turn onto the highway. Probably at 3 o'clock in the morning, you might. Because I looked at it when I'm round a little bit later than that of the morning, and I thought, yeah, it's probably, I could turn there now. But there is one consent authority that if they threw up a massive red flag at me and said, and I really don't care, and I won't use the word I want to use, that if they're saying it will walk away, I don't take threats. I don't care. We've been threatened. We're going to take the Land Environment Court. Councillors have come and gone here in the past, said, open your wallet up. We're just giving money away to lawyers and that. And, you know, we've defended cases. We had a case here tonight where we, as a whole group of 9, have said we don't want that shed there. We have a set of rules amongst us, and we've set those rules within guidelines of rules of the state government. We've realised now that those rules, we probably need to have a look at them to modify it. But here is an intersection that does allow. Now, they say in here that potentially if they came out, there would be 12 movements. 6 would go west, 6 would go east. 2 of those would potentially go in a southerly direction towards Orange, and the other 4 would go in a northerly direction down to the intersection. So when it was brought up again, I went down there and had a look again, and I agree 100% with Councillor Orban. That is a hectic intersection.
Yeah, you're right.
An intersection that needs, that we as councillors, and I know in my time here, I know I'm not a councillor that's ever approached you, and I think we were talking today, and probably why Councillor Orban couldn't get the Director of Plan and Environmental Services, because I've been on the phone with him a lot, so I do apologise. Is that I didn't see the red flags. I didn't see that information coming. Yes, I'm aware of it. I'll tell you what, I can go to a lot of intersections in Bathurst that I probably do go across, and there's always a bit of a fear factor that you're seeing people, how they go at a rate of knots. So I second this with as our Mayor knows, a number of times over the years, I said from one of a seconder, I'll second you on it, because we need to see the argument about it. And I don't think an argument about whether it's going to be viable or not. How many businesses have come to town, and it's unfortunate 4 or 5 years have come and gone. When the last shopping centre came to Bathurst, there was a massive outroar that we aren't ready for that new shopping centre. Will not survive. Well, still there to this day. I've never got on the economic factor of it in relation to will that business make a profit. You know, I always worry when a business comes to town, what impact will it have on those local businesses? But then I look at those local businesses, and when you started up because you saw an opportunity. You saw an opportunity, and there might have been already, I'll grab a hairdresser's already, say 10 in town, and you thought, well, the town could do with another one. You know, I don't think we can get in the game of saying whether you're going to be profitable, when you're going to be successful, and I don't think there's one councillor here would ever take any threats from any business. But I've got to look at the facts in front of me, and the facts in front of me say that it's allowable by the actual authority that is the only authority. And I'll stand corrected if there's another one I'm missing out, but Traffic New South Wales controls that intersection. Now, you know, I don't want to see anything done after the fact, but I think it's an intersection that I believe potentially, like a lot of intersections that come onto highways, that Traffic New South Wales probably keeps an eye on and keeps an eye on their figures. And I've got no doubt as this council, we could be raising the issue with them if there's any other data that changes. But the data and the director of both areas, engineering and planning, there doesn't seem to be the data that backs that up. And there's one consent authority. It's not as if I'm talking to 4 or 5 different consultants that got all the same letters after their name and they're telling me 4 or 5 different things. It's the one group. Yeah, I've got to put a bit of faith in that. Am I concerned about the corner? I'm concerned about a lot of corners in Bathurst, but I think we've got to look at it for what it is. We put a condition on it. They came back at us. There's certainly no backflips because there's potential with a lot of other decisions we've made that people will ask us, and it has. I don't know how many I've seen where it's come back to us over years, and every councillor here would have seen them.
Councillor North, can you just wind it up, please? Right.
And we've got to take that. So this thing about backflipping and all this, if you're doing your job as a councillor and someone raises an issue later on that maybe you didn't consider in that way, you're doing your job. Whether you still continue down that line or you change your line, that's a decision we make. You voted in to make that decision, and I guess we'll see what the vote will be tonight.
Thank you, Councillor North. Would you like to? Is there any more discussion?
Just a last question. Could I just check that the motion that it stands says that the situation will be looked at in a year's time. Could we say, in fact, that if it doesn't work out in a year's time, we need to put traffic lights there? Can that be considered?
No, that's not being considered at the moment.
Not now, but I mean, can we, in principle?
No,
Is
no,
that what Councillor Christian suggested?
no, I'll get the general. Is there any more discussion first? No, no, righto.
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Before Councillor Christian finishes up, can you explain then, General Manager, what it is?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. What is on the table is that council grant consent pursuant to section 4.16 of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979 to the modification of development application number 2019/367 to delete condition number 5 relating to access onto Howick Street and B Caller Division. So in other words, it's removing that restriction on access and not doing any other amendments to the DA.
Okay, so we're all clear. Would you like to finish off there, Councillor Christian?
Certainly, and just to address your question, Councillor Morse, I'm sure we can come back at a later date and have a look at this intersection and then deal with the relevant authorities if it's a later date, separate of this DA.
Well, I'm glad this meeting's on camera. I can't believe some of the stuff I've heard. Apparently, you're not allowed to change your
Could I
mind.
please address,
Mr. Mayor.
it is on camera and it will be.
Of course it is.
Yes,
You're
right.
not allowed to change your mind. We've all learnt that tonight. Headline, Councillor Jennings. New businesses not welcome to Bathurst because you create competition.
Could you stick to report?
I will. I
Righto.
write it down very carefully. I've got a quote. I've got a quote here.
Excuse me. Stand up, please, and point of order.
Yeah, point of order. I just don't like being misrepresented. If you want to quote me, quote my words.
Speak to me. Speak to the point of order. Thank you. Okay.
So this is all very interesting indeed. Yes, it's about jobs. Of course, it's about jobs. You've got a company that's come here to Bathurst that sees Bathurst as a viable area, and they want to make money. And they've obviously picked this site because you can come in A and you can come in B and you can come and leave in B as well. They only wanted to exit onto Stewart Street. I'm not sure if you can. My memory doesn't serve me if you can pull in from Stewart Street, but of course they want cars to access Howick Street and turn right onto Howick Street and then right onto Stewart Street if they want to. They've looked at this site. This is a big company. They do their research. Not Johnny Come Lately's in the area. This is a site that at the moment looks like a dog's breakfast. There's not much happening there at all. We get a company that comes here, a very popular one I might add, and they've identified this of all the areas they could have chose, Mr. Mayor. All the areas in town, all the areas in surrounding towns, but they've chose this site, and I have no doubt that access played a big part of that. And of course it's about jobs, and it might create about 50 of them for our young people. And if that's not a good story, then I may as well walk out of this chamber now, because that's an embarrassment. All right? Rankin Street, cross at Durham Street. There is a deadly intersection. How many of you have screamed and roared about that? How many? The crickets. That's the worst intersection in this city, and we've done nothing to address that problem as far as I'm aware. That's a dangerous intersection. But you can do what you like on that one. Give me a break. Now, we compare this to the Orange site. Now, I'm going to find out what happened at the meeting the other night in Orange. It's on their main highway into the city, and it's very, very similar to this one. Cars can turn right. I mean, it's their busiest road in the city, for goodness sake. But this site, for some reason, is deemed unacceptable. I really struggle just to contain my emotions with this one. I'm hearing that a business that can come into this city is essentially not welcome at this site when they've chose this site when there's nothing else at this site. This council, particularly councillors, have a reputation for making things bloody hard for people with DAs. I mean, how many DAs have we had tonight where the recommendation has been approve? But we know better. This is an absolute disgrace. And you know what? If they walk away, that will not be on me. Those lost jobs will not be on me. And this council's reputation will not be on me.
Thank you, Council. No, thank you, Councillor Christian. No. We'll move on now. No more discussion. Now I'm going to put the motion and call of the division. Those in favour? Those against? So we've got we'll do that again. Those in favour? 4. Those against? 5. Lost. We move on to item number 9, DA.
Mr. Mayor, could I ask that with that item lost, it would be preferable then if there was a motion moved to the table for the, as was typed, to say that the not.
Okay, I'll ask the mover and a seconder. We do the original one. So who would like to move the original one? Righto, Councillor Orban, Councillor Rudge. And I'll put there and call a division again. Those in favour? Those against? Thank you. Now we move on. Item number 9, DA 2019-140, 17 lot residential subdivision at Lime Kilns Road, Kelso. Moving a second, Councillor North, Councillor Rudge. Any discussion? Councillor or question, Councillor North then?
After talking with one of many issues with the planner, this would hopefully maybe a start to let the relevant authorities know that we would like that roundabout at the other end of the road, which they don't seem to know anything about. I would probably suggest it to let them know if this does pass through that we're all full steam ahead to try to make sure that road, that connecting road that Councillor Orban spoke about and was able to get to a meeting and explain in more detail that night, that I see this as a great chance to start the process rolling, get that road through and be a link to get off that highway and to access other parts of Bathurst. So I think this is a good thing.
Thank you, Councillor North. Is there any more discussion? If not, I put the motion. Those in favour? Those against, and call a division. Well, carried. Item number 10, Bathurst Regional Urban Release Area, Kelso. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Rudge, Councillor Jennings. Any discussion? There's no discussion, then I'll put the motion and call a division. Those in favour? I just said that. I call a division now. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 11, State Environmental Planning Policy, exempt complying development codes, manor houses. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Jennings, Councillor Orban. Is there any discussion? There's no discussion. Yes, Councillor North.
Mr. Director, I guess this would be probably the area where we're talking about sheds and that. This has taken a little bit of time. Would this be a similar area that state planning policy exempt and compliant developments where the shed garage issue would be coming under? Would that be correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes. This, of course, is in regard to manor houses, but yes, that's the relationship between the state environmental planning policies and council's local policies, where state trumps local.
Yes.
Is there any further discussion? There's no further discussion. Then I put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 12, buy local gift cards. COVID-19 competition. Councillor Jennings, Councillor North. Is there any discussion? There's no discussion. Then I'll move on and put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Now we deal with Director of Corporate Services and Finance report. Statement of investments. Can I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Hanger, Councillor Rudge. Is there any discussion? There's no discussion. Then I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 2, the monthly review and operational plan. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Jennings, Councillor Rudge. Any discussion? There's no discussion. Then I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 3, sundry section 356 donations. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Orban, Councillor Rudge. Any discussion? There's no discussion. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 4, power of attorney. Of attorney. Yeah, that sounds like that here tonight, I can tell you. Could I please have a mover and a second? Councillor Christian, Councillor North. Any discussion? No discussion, then I'll put the motion. Those in favour, those against, carried. Item number 5, request for financial assistance. This is My Brave Australia. Could I please have a mover and a second? Yes, Councillor Jennings.
I'd like to make an amendment that council does provide financial assistance to the tune of the BMEC hire fee, waiving that of, I think, $3,151.50.
Hang on.
Through Mr Mayor, Councillor Rudge needs to declare. Sorry.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I declare that I have a non-pecuniary interest in the financial request for My Brave Australia, as I have been asked to share my story at their event in October. Thank you.
Okay, so Councillor Jennings, you continue.
Sorry. I'd like to make an amendment that council does provide financial assistance to this event to the tune of the BMEC hire fees, which is cited in the report as $3,185.50.
Can I have a seconder for that? Councillor Morse. Is there any discussion? Well, there's no discussion. Then I put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. The Bathurst Winters Festival. Item number 6. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor North. Councillor Hanger. Any discussion? Councillor North.
Yeah, look, just to say again, I think any councillor that does get a chance to talk to the media, whatever form it is, we've all said and sung the praises of our winter festival, but I'll keep saying I think the staff this year in the events area should be acknowledged for the efforts put in very tough and trying times, and I think what they brought to the community in tough times was a really awesome experience. And I know we keep saying it, but we've got some wonderful staff, and those ladies should be congratulated.
I fully endorse that, Councillor North, and everyone who had the great idea of the drive-in was brilliant, and I hope it does continue. Is there any more discussion? There's no more discussion. Then I put the motion. Those in favour, those against, carried. Item number 7, request for financial assistance to the Packard Rally. Could I please have a mover and a seconder?
Could I make an alteration to that, please, Mr Mayor, that we host a mayoral reception but not waive the charges associated with the closure of Russell Street?
Do I have a seconder to that? You'll second that? All right. Is there any discussion?
I'd like to speak to that. And over the years, we have a regular request for us to pay for the closure of Russell Street when somebody else wants to come to Bathurst and have their function. Well, I think if they want to come to Bathurst, show off their cars, then they should pay for the closure of Russell Street. We have a really good example today of council. We've luckily changed it to say we can't afford to support an event for mental health, but yes, we can give $2,500 for some people who choose to come to Bathurst and choose something that we have to pay for. And I think that's really wrong. I think if they want to come, they should know that it will cost $2,500 and they should put it in their budget. If they want to come, then I do believe that they should pay for it.
Thank you, Councillor Morse. Is there any more discussion? Councillor Jennings.
Only to say thank you, Mr Mayor. I understand the sentiment that Councillor Morse is putting forward. I'm just wondering, to what extent do we understand the business case for this event in terms of their financials? How confident are we that if we didn't provide this kind of money, they wouldn't be able to come, or it would have a major event?
I might get to the director to speak to that.
Through you, Mr Mayor, given the nature of this request, we actually haven't asked for that information to be provided.
Could you also provide, do we have funding for what Councillor Morse is asking for? Didn't we set aside funding for that out of a separate one?
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, that's correct. When Council was allocating its Section 356 donations for the current financial year, Council deliberately set aside $10,000, essentially being for four opportunities for Russell Street to be closed. So this $2,500 that's been asked for on this occasion would actually be taken from that allocation if Council was to support that.
Thank you. Councillor Christian?
Yeah, just through you, Mr Mayor, to the Director of Finance. For any request of funding or any DA, is it actually a requirement for a business to state its business case and provide all its bank details?
Through you, Mr Mayor, it generally depends on the nature of the request that's being proposed. So just, I guess, a random request for financial assistance, we generally do ask for their financials and so forth. However, in cases such as this particular one, it's not a request that we would normally ask for unless it was part of a more major event that Council was all contributing to in that space as well.
Question?
Yeah, could we find an alternative site for these cars that want to come? Can't they use the back of the pits? Can they use somewhere else? And let's face it, Mount Panorama is the place for cars. Could they use that at no cost?
Well, I think we've dealt with this, and that's why we do have funding for the closure of Russell Street. Right, Director? Well, I was giving you an answer, but if you want it out of a director, do you want it out of director, or did you want it? Okay then, Director.
Through Mr. Mayor, I'll have a crack first, and I'll feel free for the other director to step up. Largely, it's basically the request that we received from the car clubs. Whilst Mount Panorama is a site that is synonymous with cars and car displays, it doesn't provide the same level of exposure that Russell Street does. However, we're only acting on the request as they are submitted to us by the car clubs.
Okay. Councillor North?
Yeah, I'm glad, Mr Director, you raised the issue about the 10,000 because I think the majority of councillors here spoke that we had concerns and that can we set up a process in place, and the 10,000 was figured out to be, and that would acknowledge 4 organisations. So we actually have addressed this as councillors, saying how can we address this? There just a bit earlier, there was $3,000 odd, and you're right to support, and I think every councillor did support that. I guess the staff have got a job to play, and they'll make a recommendation. As we know here tonight, we haven't always agreed with their recommendations. Councillor Morse, you remember a while back with the Weavers and that group, and that they wanted reduction from fees from the facility. So all that, the reason why, as we as councillors, the way I see it, I'll stand corrected, is that we want to be able to encourage people to come to our wonderful city. And what we're seeing now, the car buffs, because there's a lot of older ones, they're actually going to our museums. And we've got a lot of people now, because we've got such a wonderful variety of museums, and that they are not only just doing this, they're experiencing our city. We're in really tough times at the moment, and the councillor next to me, that we're worried about people coming into our city. But here's a case that we spoke about our concerns as councillors. We put money aside. We put 10,000. Here's one of those parts of the 10,000, 2,500. And my personal view is I want to continue to support it because we all agreed as councillors to go down that path. And here's a request for part of that money.
Thank you, Councillor North. Is there any more discussion? Please read it out there, General Manager.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the motion over on the table is that Council hosts a mayoral welcome reception at the National Motor Racing Museum for the participants at the 19th National Packard Rally, Bathurst.
So I'm going to, just for the rally, not just for the mayoral reception. Okay.
It's just for the mayoral reception.
That's if you're in favour of crossing out that one. That's what it is. So I'll put that to councillors. Those in favour of that? Those against that one? Right. You can now move.
Can I move a motion to go back to original recommendation and as it says in point 1 and point 2, host a meal reception and waive the charges and financial implications, it says there, and we clearly as councillors know where that's coming out of.
Okay, can I have a seconder for that? Councillor Jennings.
Through you, Mr Mayor, could I just try and clarify the original motion that was put? Was the original motion was it lost or was it carried?
Lost.
Okay.
So it was lost, the first one. So we're back to square one. Okay, and now I have a mover in Councillor North and Jennings. Now I'm going to put it out there for any discussion. Is there any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Right, now we go to item 8, acquisition of part lot 404 DP 1241250 PJ Moody Drive, Raglan. Moving a second. Councillor North, Councillor Rudge. Any discussion? Councillor Orban.
Just one question, it's probably away from this a little bit, but when we were given the brief on the upgrade of this piece of road, and they said there was traffic lights going in on this intersection, is this part of the works to put traffic lights in to take this bit of land, Mr Director?
Through Mr Mayor, the acquisition that's being discussed as part of the report is for the entire frontage across the airport to allow for the additional lane and also the intersection arrangement at PJ Moody Drive intersection with the highway. The design was, in terms of an unsignalised intersection, is the same size as the signalised intersection, so there's no impact as far as I'm aware to the acquisition with respect to traffic lights at that particular intersection.
Thank you, Director. Is there any more discussion? If not, then I'm going to put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 9, Councillor Hanger.
Mr Mayor, I have a declare a non-pecuniary interest. My daughter is one of the organisers and I'll leave the chamber.
Thank you, Councillor Hanger.
7:35.
Councillor Hanger has left. We might shut the door, but he's left the room. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Christian, Councillor Morse.
Well, no, I don't want to second it, Mr Mayor. I'm just...
Hang on, before you discuss it, I'll get a seconder then. Councillor Orban.
Right.
Now, is there any discussion? Councillor Morse.
Well, I'm just being Mrs Scrooge tonight, but when I read a report that says, and this happens for the Bathurst Spring Garden Spectacular, that these people asking us for money, over $4,500, which has enabled the event to donate almost $10,000 to local charities. We don't know which charities, which causes and which community group sponsorships. Why is council giving money to an organisation so that they can give it away? I felt like that about the Garden Spring Spectacular. They say you raise all this money and we give it to causes. Who, why and what for? I think we should make a generality of a rule that says if you want funding for your event, you do not give the proceeds to charity. Now, if they've had a profit of $10,000, which they've given away, why can't they afford the charges associated with the event? It doesn't make sense to me. And again, we were saying we didn't have money for a mental health function event, but we're prepared to give away $4,500 so they can give it away to somebody else. And I really don't think that's right. If you'd like to go back to them and say, what are you doing with this money? Who are you giving this money to? It might not be causes that we want to sponsor. I think it's really wrong that they have $10,000 that they've given away.
Thank you, Councillor Morse. Councillor Jennings.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I fully concur with Councillor Morse's thoughts there. But obviously the reason why they haven't got the money this year is because they gave it all away to charity. But the catch there is obviously over time, would we be able to, for example, talk to a group like this, where it's an ongoing thing, where they raise the money for charity and where they usually cover their costs, say to them, if for example, the event is run this year and they make 10,000 again, then they lock in the fee for next year and take that out of last year's or this year's event. Just so that there's an understanding that if they can cover this cost and make it pay for itself, well, council doesn't want to be footing the bills for it unnecessarily, particularly when they're successful. I mean, what if that turns into $20,000 and $30,000? So I know it's tricky, a timing issue there, but I wouldn't mind seeing us being able to have a post-event meeting with them and say, well, show us how you went. And if you want this for the next year, then you can buy your support, buy it at the price that it's costing.
So do you want to add that to it? Let this event go this year and then add that so they come back next year knowing
I'm
that?
happy, I'm happy to support it actually as it is and give them the implication of the finances is only 1,619 from the thing. So I'm happy for that to go through this year, but just as a suggestion, I guess, for staff to address and say, well, can we look at having a better relationship with them? And if they make 10,000 next year, I mean, fair enough, give them a bit of a buffer, say they've got to get over 5,000 or some amount before they commit to paying our fee. But I just think that would be a better way of doing it, and it keeps the event sustainable.
Okay. Orban?
Burke? Can I just ask the question? Was at the start of this event, and I think this is going to be year 4, is that correct? It says, read there somewhere. Was there a commitment by these people to talk with council, and council agreed to look after hires and that sort of things for the first 3 to 5 years, and then after that they were going to become self-sufficient? Is that how this is going to run? And I think, judging by the figures, that it could be, and similar to what Councillor Jennings just said, I think they should be looking after year 5 at standing on their own 2 feet and running an event without any assistance from council. It's a good event. It does bring people to town. I mean, I don't know how many it'll bring in this time around, but is that the setup?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that's correct. The initial conversations we had with the organising committee 3 years ago, 4 years ago now, was around them establishing a model whereby in a 3 to 5 year time frame that they would actually have an event that was paying for itself entirely.
Thank you, Director. You'd like to carry on, Mr. Orban?
No, that's okay. That's where I thought that event was coming from. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. But yeah, I think we do need to bring them in and have discussions with them after this event and progress that future on with them. I'd like to see the event keep going, but I think
sounds good.
Things have to keep in perspective.
Question,
If we've got 2 groups, and I also refer to the Bathurst Spring Garden Spectacular, if they do it as a fundraising activity, does council have the right to say, well, who are you giving the money to? Because I've got no idea who they give them to. I'm sure they're worthy causes, but do we have the right to say, well, actually, we already give money to X, Y, and Z, or we don't approve of that? Because let's say if they gave it to a smoking program, well, I mean, that wouldn't be a good idea. Yeah. So do we have the right to ask who they're giving the money to?
Well, I'll put that over to the Director. Would you like him to answer that question? Okay, thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, essentially it's, short answer is yes. We can actually ask for clarification on where council's money has been allocated to. In this case here, we're actually not paying him anything. We're just actually reducing a fee. So it's actually not money that we're providing, it's a reduced cost.
Thank you, Councillor Morse. Councillor North.
Yeah, I don't think you're being a miser or how you put it. It's asking a question, but I look at something that every year that I think it's 44 or 45 years at the Edgells Jog. And I've got no doubt the money we support to help cover their costs allows them, with money they make from entry fees, to give people some money at the end. So by us helping them there, it helps give money away to someone who wins an event. We have the Eisteddfod, which is extensive money, and it helps them run the Eisteddfod. We donation, and I think last year we extended our process with the Show Society to fund a stage, and that stage allows them to, I believe, have people up there. I guess they're paid performers or whatever. A lot of things we do, you could look at and say we're giving it to them and they're giving it to someone else. What Councillor Orban said was right. I think, like with this one, like with Ryder and other ones, we've sort of set a benchmark that we want to see how you're going in a period of time. And it's, I guess, like also council in another way, that we enter agreements with that place at the Mount Panorama for racing. We're a partner to put money into something to create an event. And what it gives us, in a lot of the cases of what we give money to, is people coming in our community and spending money in our community. We could probably nearly go to anything we give money to and say, and go back to all the time and all over these years, which I hate the process with 356. If we see it that they want funding from us to pay for someone's wages, it's normally a thing we say we don't do. But if it's to help run a program, we've probably got a different look about it. But you know what? That could have been helping cover wages. Yeah, but the Edgeworth Job gives money away. There's B2B, from what I understand, when Headspace, when there was a lot of money, they give money to a wonderful organisation, Headspace, for kids young up from, not sure what the age, up to 25. So if we looked at everything, you'd probably find to a degree our money's going away, but also look at what that organisation's doing and to the community. And I think, like we did with the cars in Russell Street, we probably have to set a policy in motion for these things moving forward that we'd like to see in a certain period of time. Instead of 2,000 we're giving of it, hopefully a 5,000 donation that helps you get some awards and that up and running. But yeah, if you really delved into a lot of things you do, you could probably see nearly a similar answer.
Is there any more discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
The motion is as typed in the report.
As read in the report. So I'm putting that motion to you. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 10. Yeah, come back in. Yeah. You might have gone to sleep. Okay, Councillor Hanger has come back. Item number 10, request for financial assistance, Housing Plus DA 2019/133, a mover and a seconder. Councillor Fry, Councillor Rudge. Any discussion? No, okay, no, no discussion. That one made it very easy for me. I'll put the motion. Those in favour, those against, carried. Thank you. We go now to the Director Engineering Services report. Water security update. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Christian, Councillor North. Is there any discussion? Councillor Orban.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I just ask, I've heard a rumour. Look out. Can I just ask the Director about the report? Our fantastic stormwater harvesting area that's going to come online when we build it. Is it true that there's been 3 site cards placed on the proposed pipeline route for the stormwater harvesting?
Director?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that's correct.
Great. So do these site cards, I think they're supposed to represent where there's physical artefacts, is that correct?
Through Mr Mayor, generally speaking, yes. However, there have been certainly site cards registered in the Bathurst area for intangible items.
So when we put the route of the pipeline, when we drew it up and had it planned, how long after that did these site cards come into play?
Through Mr Mayor, certainly a number of weeks only after the finalisation of the route.
Thank you, Councillor Orban. Councillor Morse.
Could we ask where they are?
Councillor Director, where are the site cards?
Mr Mayor, could I speak on that? No, you can't have them publicly released because they are site cards and there is Aboriginal cultural heritage, and it's the same as with the HRs that you've had. They can't be released. Certainly one of the items was for the potato massacre site, which has been an area that has been discussed for many years and decades.
Thank you, General Manager. Councillor Christian.
Yeah, just a question on the back of that. So how long may this take to sort out before we can actually, get this oh so important project up and running?
Through Mr Mayor, currently there's an Aboriginal cultural heritage assessment being undertaken on the route at the moment, following a due diligence. We're anticipating that will be completed October of this year, which will be the final piece of documentation required to seek approval through the state government agencies.
Thank you. Councillor North.
I'll keep it broad to you, Mr Director. So how our ongoing negotiations, discussions with the different water authorities, would you summarise it that we are moving at a pace that we need to move and we're not getting consistent roadblocks? Because I'm suggesting that we're still getting roadblocks thrown at us from all manner of the activities that we want to do from our water harvesting and pipeline issues.
Through Mr Mayor, we have submitted documentation in draft format to the state government agencies for review. We have meetings shortly to, I suppose, understand the state government's concerns, if there are any, relating to that documentation. We're certainly working effectively with the state government agencies. We would certainly like it to be quicker. However, there are processes that need to be followed.
Question.
I take it we're putting it to the office of our state member on a regular basis. Any concerns, worries or progress moving forward? I would like to think that he is fully aware of potential issues that are sitting out there.
Through Mr Mayor, our local member is kept up to date regarding the project.
Thank you, Councillor North. Is there any more discussion? Councillor Fry.
Through Mr Mayor, Mr Engineer, we've got option 1 for the stormwater harvesting pipeline. I assume this is the rising main from the water treatment plant to the wastewater treatment plant to the water treatment plant. We've got option 1 through the levee, option 2 through the public road network, option 3 underbore the Macquarie River. I'm not clear on option 3. Is that the one that I'd put forward on behalf of the Greening Bathurst panel of scientists?
Through you, Mr Mayor, no, not quite. Certainly the option 3 is a variation on option 1 and crosses the river in 2 locations to minimise impact to the levee, which were the original concerns with option 1.
He's still going.
The option that, as I say, that I referred to, which was a longer route along the eastern levee and along various streets such as Edgells Lane and Hereford Street, and did cross the highway. Could that be seen as option 4? Could I refer to that as option 4? Or?
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, it could. Certainly something that we haven't designed in terms of as an option other than in a preliminary sense due to the increased costs that we would have. We're certainly trying to make sure that the project is as affordable as possible to the ratepayer and the taxpayer.
So, in very rough terms, option 1, 2, and 3 are, say, what, 5 million, or would, if they were, say, 5 million, would option 4 be another couple of million on top of that?
Through Mr Mayor, pricing certainly hasn't been finalised for the preferred option, but it is certainly the most cost efficient over the first two. The original proposal, as suggested by Greening Bathurst and others, to go over to the eastern levy on Gilmore Street, for instance, would certainly add a number of millions of dollars to the project.
Thank you. Councillor Christian.
Well, it's raining, it's pouring, the old man's snoring, and Mr Mayor, I'll let you choose who the old man is. Look, I just wanted to ask, primarily, I suppose, what time frame, now I know it's probably difficult to answer, but what time frame are we looking at for completion of the stormwater project? Is there, is there a real rough idea, or?
Through Mr Mayor, it's anticipated that the construction time frame would be, in an ideal sense, 6 months. We certainly would be very keen to pursue that once we have approvals in place, and that still is an ongoing matter.
So the approvals themselves could take 6 months, potentially, like you're right in saying?
We certainly hope not. We're anticipating approvals this year on the basis that the documentation that we're working towards. However, I can't provide certainty given we don't have that approval.
Okay, now, you've already spoken. Right, well, you can speak now.
I wasn't going to put that way, the old man snoring or whatever, but due to my work commitments, I'm out at the dam 3 days a week, and I've got to say, from Friday last week to today, I'm up the back of the dam. The water inflow that I'm seeing is absolutely tremendous, and if we're not over 60% now, I'm surprised, because this inlet that's been dry or virtually nothing in it is 20 or 30 metres across now at least. But in saying all that, in the rain we're getting, the farmers told me, and they said they predicted, and they said, we're going to have a better time for a couple of years. But in all those predictions and that, where are we at as far as hard, cold facts, as far as how's it been put, the zero date? What have we picked up? It's moving quite well. Have we got another 6 months, a couple of months? What's our general, the last inflow, I think, nearly gave us 10% there 3 or 4 weeks ago. This looks like it's going to give us over 10%. To think we could be getting into the 60s and 70s before we get the spring rain. How is our end date going, and how is that helping? Because Councillor Christian just made a comment about the approvals. The approvals, from what I understand, and I want to stand corrected here, that by being on that critical needs list that we work so hard, that there shouldn't be so many roadblocks to get these through.
Through Mr Mayor, to answer the question about the 0 day on the basis of zero inflow, as indicated in the report at the time of writing, which was 2 weeks ago, the 0 day was December next year. The most recent rainfall that we've had and those current inflows that we've had over the last few days, I don't have firm detail, but it certainly would be February 22 or thereabouts. So we certainly have additional time to make the appropriate choices and ensure that public money is spent in the most efficient way. With regard to the approvals, we are certainly working towards approvals under the Critical Needs Act, and that's where our current processes lie.
Thank you. Councillor Jennings.
Just a quick question. From memory, the easing of restrictions is supposed to be, is it still set at 75% to get to, or has there been change of thinking on that?
Through Mr Mayor, certainly there's a working party scheduled for the 9th of September where discussions will be had about plan restrictions and potential reductions in those. That will certainly provide detail for councillors for a potential report in October for the way forward.
And as Mayor, I've asked for that to be held next month, so we're up to date on that water security. Is there any more discussion? If not, then I put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 2, roadside weed control program. From the Upper Macquarie County Council, Councillor North, Councillor Fry. Is there any discussion? Councillor North.
I'll start by making a statement that as this council, the support that increased support that we have received from Bathurst Regional Council and Councillor Fry, I'm sure, would back me up, and our other constituent councils, has seen Upper Macquarie County Council be regarded as one of the best weeds authorities in New South Wales, and the results we're achieving back that up. But could I ask the director that could you give the other councillors here that haven't probably been privy to those discussions with my general manager at Upper Macquarie County Council and David Young, a bit of a background further on this, on your discussions, please?
Sure. Through Mr Mayor, this report essentially is following a suggestion or a request from Upper Macquarie County Council that we waive the need to follow the roadside vegetation management plan that councillors adopted some time ago, which goes to protecting native vegetation on roadsides. Based on the basis of there is a policy in place, I've refused to provide that discretion. Following a discussion with the General Manager of Upper Macquarie County Council, they've agreed to comply with the roadside vegetation management plan in the main, with minor variation with regard to the actual practice of spraying of herbicide. Essentially, the roadside vegetation management plan indicates that there is potential for a direct discussion with the Upper Macquarie County Council to have those variations changed, but I'll put it to council to seek their endorsement. Essentially, it will model the practices that they've carried out on our roadsides for over 10 years. And during that time, I'm not aware of any concerns that have been raised over their practices. However, we will also put in terms of the letter back to the UMCC that will monitor the maintenance of vegetation and essentially weeds on the roadsides. And if there's any concerns, we may look at other alternatives.
Councillor Fry.
Mr Mayor, for the engineer, I don't share as much confidence as you, Director, in off-target kills. Would you want an undertaking that the contractors, the weed spraying contractors, were trained in native plant identification before this went ahead?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I suppose the better way of putting it is the operators, be it contractors, via the way of engagement through Upper Macquarie County Council, will need to comply with our roadside vegetation management plan, and that goes as part of that in terms of being understanding of what vegetation they would be targeting.
Thank you, Director. Is there any more discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour, those against, carried. Item number 3, contract for supply and delivery of road signs. Can I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Rudge, Councillor Hanger. Any discussion? Councillor Christian.
How will this affect, I suppose a question to you, Director of Engineering, through you, Mr Mayor, how will this affect the road signs in and out of the CBD here in the city?
Through Mr Mayor, essentially what this tender, should council follow on with the resolution to call for tenders within Central JO, it provides a potential for lower cost in terms of supply due to the larger buying power of the Central JO group, and so that adds to cost savings to our operation, which then thus means the opportunity for further roadside sign replacements.
Thank you, Engineer. Councillor Christian?
Just on that, whereabouts are we up to? I believe the council undertook a signage audit at some point. Have we completed that particular audit or not? Because I'm still driving around this intersections where if you're a visitor, you wouldn't know where you were.
Through Mr Mayor, yes, the audit has been done. It's a matter of time and resource to follow on with the undertakings of that audit, which was done internally by our staff.
Thank you, Councillor Christian. Is there any more discussion? If not, then I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. We go now to Director of Cultural and Community Services report, Arts Out West, annual report. Mover and a seconder. Councillor Morse, Councillor North. Any discussion? No discussion. Then I put the motion. Those in favour, those against? Carried. Item number 2, July 2020 school holidays activities. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Jennings, Councillor Morse. Any discussion? Councillor Morse.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would just like to clarify that in fact we're not having school borders closed, we're having the B-O-R-D-E-R, just a spelling of border or border. It implies that school boarding students aren't allowed out.
Thank you. Is there any more discussion? Councillor Roach.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to just raise a couple of points. I guess congratulatory.
Yeah, it does happen, doesn't it?
To the director and his staff. As we've all been made aware, the Rail Museum has had 10,000 visitors or over that possibly now, and been awarded the Leo Kelly Award for reuse of the building, which I think is most appropriate for Bathurst, being a heritage town. I think that sits very well. I'd like to congratulate everybody involved in that. It's a great museum. The Bathurst Regional Gallery is currently hosting the 2019 Archibald Prize. The tour is the exhibition of the Art Gallery of New South Wales, and honestly, it's well worth a look. There's some magnificent paintings down there, so it's well worth a visit. Of course, as Councillor Moore sent us an email today saying the library was in the paper. We're having refurbishment down there. It's all happening, bringing to life the library, where I think some time ago everybody thought libraries were completely out, but we've gone with the times and it's all looking very promising. As far as BMEC's concerned, we had Cabaret in Your Kitchen. That was a fantastic show in June. It was just to bring a laugh and some enjoyable times during some pretty difficult changes in our lifestyle, I guess you could say, in June of this year. So it was really refreshing. I'm also I'm very interested in the marketing campaign that we've got. Now's the time to love New South Wales, in conjunction with Destination New South Wales. This is a terrific campaign. I mean, I know we're continuing to be responsive to the ever-changing COVID situation. We do have to keep moving ahead as safely as possible. And I think I'd like to say well done to the BVEC staff and the director. You're all doing a wonderful job under some very difficult circumstances. I understand tourism is suffering, and I think from what I can see, we're really pushing above our weight here in the Bathurst region. So I'd like to congratulate you on that.
Thank you, Councillor Roach. And also I'd like to say to the Director of Community, my regards on the big effort that his managers have done, just not to the library, the museums through COVID-19 have been exceptionally pleasing to me as Mayor, and I think I'm saying that on behalf of all the councillors. You have done a magnificent job, and to have the Leo Kelly Award, that's just not this year, we got that last year, so it just shows you are doing a good job. Is there any more discussion? Councillor Morse.
If I may, I agree and wholeheartedly that the community services and the have done a wonderful job. But I would like to raise the elephant in the room about visitors to Bathurst, because Mudgee has done a very good marketing campaign with the result that I've been told that Mudgee is so busy, you can't buy a cup of coffee in Mudgee, and nobody's taking any notice of the social distancing and the hand sanitizers, etc., even just to get a cup of coffee. We have recently had lots of expressions of concern about sporting groups come to Bathurst. And I'm just wondering if council is considering our reaction to visitors coming to Bathurst. I know we can't close the highway, I know all that, but is it a good idea to say everybody come to Bathurst? I'm not sure. And I just think that I would like to ask the directors to consider that. What are the plans for council in the changing COVID situation, because Mudgee is having a real big problem. And it's lovely that the visitor centre's increasing tourism, but I think it's the elephant in the room that we have to look at. Thank you.
Well, that has been wanted to be discussed by us as councillors. I suppose there's an opportunity here now that you have brought that up, that the General Manager could explain.
Through you, Mr Mayor, Council's current position, and the task force discusses it regularly, is that there are state government public health orders in place. There are also guidelines from both the federal and the state government, and based on those guidelines and directions, that is what the council is implementing at the moment. When there are community groups, such as sporting ones, operating any tournaments of that, their attention is drawn to the fact that they have to comply with the health orders. They are required to put in place COVID-safe plans that should have regard to the directions, particularly of the State Health Department. And they are also encouraged to contact the relevant state bodies, who also then provide directions in terms of the practices to occur. So it's pretty much, there are the state and federal government guidelines. They're the experts in that area, and that's what we're working on.
Thank you, General Manager. Councillor North.
Councillor Moore's beat me to it, and I'm just going to state a frustration. I won't put it to how Councillor Christian said earlier, but when I read the figures, and if you just grab 58.1% of 4,286 visitations, which is wonderful for us, it's over 2,000. And this is what I encourage councillors on social media. The backlash that come because of sporting events, these are cultural things. The backlash that I saw, and I put it to the Sport and Rec Council, I was bitterly disappointed. And there's people on there talking about our town square at the moment, and totally misinformation. We've got to understand, when we talk about consistency across the board, we as councillors said we want to do everything to keep our town alive, to make sure we social distance, and everyone here is doing that. We see it, even the media, how well they're stretched. The public gallery, we've got a couple of staff there looking very lonely. We've got to recognise that we are doing everything with our power, and as a number of councillors here would know, there was 3 of us nearly taken out of action the other week because a person came to Sydney to do a review on the General Manager. And that person was isolating him and his family, doing everything right. We, I think, as councillors have a responsibility to not furnish this, and I'm sorry, crap on social media and ripping in. It was hundreds and hundreds of people come in, buses galore. So I rang the guys at BDF, who used to play soccer for a long time. I said, "Can you tell me what's going on?" He said, "Ian, I never saw even a minibus. It could have been a minibus. 4 teams." Was it? Okay, okay. So it wasn't even one our town. But please be aware what we post on social media and commentary. It's a great thing. We as council, again, constantly hit. That is the world we live in. If we want to maintain a city and a vibrance in a very tough time, we've got to do the right thing. I'm frustrated with it. A business owner came to me yesterday that their business, the restrictions on them, and I won't say what the business was, is really onerous. Went down to get a coffee. Saw 3 people she knew were not family. she said there was no separation between the people. So what do we do? What do we do? The majority of us are doing the right thing. And then we have businesses in town that they're that close that they're touching that they disregard it. The number of people I have said, I go to a pool every day because I'm recovering from an injury, and I mean every day. And I've said to a number of people, do you see the sanitizer there? We need to be encouraging people to do the right thing because the majority of people out there are doing the right thing. And I saw those figures and I thought, we got through this. Did I see anything on social media? No, but then they'll attack the sporting groups. There was 4 junior teams. Was it Bankstown or Blaketown? Bankstown, was it? And there was 2 senior teams and no one spoke about that from the South Coast. Don't know where in the South Coast, but Health New South Wales and the peak body had everything in place. They told the men and gentlemen at council here, but I don't think personally as a council we probably responded well enough to stop this social media. And I'm sorry with the media time, some of the things that's been read in the paper that's been allowed at times. I made a phone call straight away and found out what the story was. This is what panics people. When that happened to us the other week, I looked at my mum, an 86-year-old lady. She spent a week in hospital the other week with respiratory issues with her heart. And I know Councillor Rudge, with her mum, it's over 100, with wonderful effort. It can happen just like that with one person. People are grabbing 100 people, 200 people. One person. So we've got to create an environment where we're encouraging, and we, as elected leaders in the community, I would hope are saying to people, if you're doing it, I really struggle and I really go to shopping. I'm not a really good shopper. I let my wife do that. But when I have gone, I can't believe how people with yellow marks, they think that they're going to stand right behind the person and get there quicker. You know, the staff are so busy. So we as elected leaders in this community must be encouraging people. And if we see a business that's not doing it, and I will state out one business here, I've got to give it to Country Coffee. The setup in there I think is absolutely tremendous. Absolutely amazing. And there's a benchmark. There's a benchmark for the paper and the radio to talk about. What a wonderful job. And when this business owner who's had it, and she's working hard, and the stress on her face that she had there yesterday, she said, Councillor, can I just talk to you? And she said, those 3 people I know, they're locals, they were not family. What were they doing? They're running a business. If you see that,
you need to wind up in a
minute. Yeah, I'm sorry. This is important. It's people's
we'll
health.
get an extension of time
if I
I'm just
can.
letting you know.
But this shows up that this Bathurst city is alive. We were talking about how wonderful we are, and thank you, Councillor Morse, to say the elephant in the room, because we can't forget it. If I see someone, as I said, not doing the sanitizer and all that, I'm encouraging them. We've got to keep encouraging the community. And you know what? Ones like Country Coffee, we've got to acknowledge what a wonderful effort and encourage businesses to do the same thing. We're here to survive in very tough times, but isn't it better to be open than not open at all? And is it better, what do they say, one person has the impact potentially of what 200 people they can affect? I don't know, I'm sure I know, speaking of the mayor and the general manager, it scared the life out of me the other week when I got a phone call saying this gentleman was potentially, their friends of theirs were at that Apollo, I think, restaurant.
Well, I'll just ask the council for an extension so we're on the same, right, okay.
So what I'm saying here, can we be really responsible? And I'm not having a crack at you, Councillor Christian, you're really good at social media, but all of us, we've all got a right to post things, but let's acknowledge and get the message out when we post and when we talk to people in the community. And you might be joking, let's stay away, but actually it's serious. Keep your 1.5, 2 metres. We have a responsibility because I see our staff doing it. And, you know, we talk on the radio about anyone. If you're talking to any media, we want to be a city that's alive and thriving in tough times. Let's keep getting the message out there. We can't drop the ball on this because look what happened in Victoria.
Thank you, Councillor North. Councillor Christian.
Yeah, the Deputy Mayor and I, it was actually the Deputy Mayor that brought this to my attention, and we shared a look. Look, I disagree a little bit with the Deputy Mayor, obviously. The question needs to be asked in very simple terms. Are we in a pandemic or are we not in a pandemic? is this incredibly serious? Does this kill people? Or is it rubbish and it doesn't hurt people? It's really that simple. And I was a little bit concerned to see that our visitation from Sydney is going up to 59%. Now, it's no secret that I've been calling for council to get in touch with the state government and push an idea that, look, well, we're essentially the gateway to the West, as you know, Mr. Mayor, and people are going to travel through us to go to Dubbo, Orange, Blaney, wherever. And I think we're potentially ground zero. Now, non-mandatory, or there's another word for it, non-essential travel, I think makes perfect sense. Because if we introduce that policy, or the state government, I should say, if we push them to introduce this policy, no, it's not watertight, but it allows the people in Bathurst, Orange, Dubbo, Parks, Wellington, Cowra, wherever, to live life as usual. Because I don't understand why the Astley Cup today, which is a sporting event between Orange High School, Bathurst High School and Dubbo High School, that was called off today. Because some useless bureaucrat in Bathurst, some useless bureaucrat in Sydney, in the health department, made a decision that that's unsafe.
Well, I think they made that decision right across the board.
Yeah, exactly. One size fits all, and that's what I want to avoid for Bathurst. Just because they're having an issue in Sydney or Newcastle or Wollongong, why should we have to shut down and have the same restrictions they do? It's ridiculous. Now, I agree, we have to do everything we can to help our economy, and I think the Bathurst people are doing a great job of that. But we can target people from Orange, Dubbo, Mudgee, we can target people from the West. It just concerns me that we're deliberately going out there and welcoming people from Sydney out to our area when everybody's worried about people dying and stuff like that. But on one hand, we're saying, come on board. So I just think council should, if nothing more than an insurance policy, reach out to the state government and air our concerns. Because I tell you what, if there is an issue here and if Bathurstians start dying and if we start getting a number of people infected in the area, then I am happy to say that I tried. I was not ignorant during this so-called pandemic.
Thank you, Councillor Christian. Is there any more discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. We go to item number 8 now, report of other committees, councillors. Traffic Committee report, the 7th of July 2020. Councillor Orban, Councillor Rudge. Any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour, those against, carried. Item number 2, Traffic Committee report, 4th of August 2020. Can I please have a mover and a second? Councillor North, Councillor Rudge. Any discussion? No discussion. I'll put the motion. Those in favour, those against, carried. Item number 9, there's no notices of motions. There's no rescission motions. We go to item number 11, councillors' delegate reports. Councillors, Councillor North, Councillor Jennings. Any discussion? No discussion. Then I'll put the motion. Those in favour, those against, carried. Item number 12, resolved to go into confidential committee of the whole. Could I please have a move? Councillor North, Councillor Fry. Councillors, is there any members of the public and press who wish to make representation to the council as to whether the matters should or should not be dealt with in confidential committee? As there is no representation, so I now put the motion to go into confidential committee. Councillor Orban, Councillor Jennings. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Could we please ensure is the recording been going or not going? recording of the meeting be turned back on, and the doors are open.
Mr.
General Manager, can you adopt the report of the committee as a whole?
Mr. Mayor, Council has just met in confidential session and has recommended to the full Council, in terms of the first item, the proposed new commercial lease agreement at part lot 23 DP 1169512, known as 366 Panorama Avenue, Bathurst. Resolved that Council enter the heads of agreement proposed by Leading Edge Data Centre Proprietary Limited in relation to a commercial lease agreement for part lot 23 DP 1169512, known as 366 Panorama Avenue, Bathurst, as detailed in the report. The second item, Sunnybright Estate. The Council has recommended that Council adopt the price reduction for lot 66 DP 1253021, known as 4 Wallace Way, Kelso, as detailed in the report. The next item is the lease of the Perthville shed from John Holland Rail. That Council approve the renewal of the commercial lease agreement AGR 13339 with John Holland for part lot 3815 DP 1101839 and part lot 3814 DP 1101839, located in Perthville Village, which is the site of the Rural Fire Service Perthville Brigade Station, as detailed in the report. The next item is to do with a variation to the Bathurst International Motor Racing Event Agreement. The Council vary the Bathurst International Agreement as detailed within this report and delegate authority to the General Manager to execute relevant documents to bring the variation to effect. The next item is to do with proposed easement for land at Kelso with respect to water supply. The recommendation is that Council approve the proposed easement for water supply 3 wide on lots 11, 12 and 13 in DP 1089380 at Bathurst, and lots 2 and 3 and 4 in DP 6444 at Kelso, and B, approve the terms proposed as detailed in the Director of Engineering Services report. The next item was contract for construction of the Perthville flood mitigation levy. Resolve that Council accepts the variation to contract 3600715 in the amount of $418,705.24, excluding GST, subject to provisional items and variations. And the last item, Wimbendale Dam operations, that the update on the operation of Wimbendale Dam information be noted.
Thank you, General Manager. Now, councillors, we need to adopt the items of the committee as a whole. I've got a mover in Councillor North and Christians. I put the motion. Those in favour, those against, carried. And the meeting now is closed at 9:05. Thank you very much, councillors. Could we have the recording turned off, please?